Welcome back to the morning show here on the Arise News channel. Joining us now to review some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Arise News analyst Emmanuel Efeni. Good morning, Emmanuel.
Good morning, Ruben. Good morning, Tundu, and good morning, Leila. Let's start with this day newspaper straight away. The lead story, Zenith leads as 4 banks record 431 billion naira profit in 9 months. The 4 banks are in order of performance: Zenith Bank, GT Bank, UBA, and the First Bank Group, also known as FBN Holdings PLC. And these 4 banks also reported total assets of 19.95 trillion. Good one for the banks in spite of the challenges of the times. Of course, they've been able to record increased performance over the last 9 months following cost optimization measures and better risk management strategies. No wonder CBN is trying to compel them to lend more to the productive sectors of the economy.
Yes, and actually channel those profits to the real sector.
So I can understand CBN governors.
It's not about the profit of the banks. I mean, these are first-tier banks.
Yes.
So it's expected that if you're a first-tier bank, you'll probably do well. And Access Bank is not captured yet in that report, and it falls into this category of first-tier banks. They seem to do well, much better than other tiers of banks in terms of financial intermediation. And I think that that's the primary concern of the Central Bank of Nigeria, to deepen financial intermediation. Because if you do a breakdown, you see that the concern is that many of these banks, they just deal in government securities. Hence, the recent directive about open management operation, OMO, and that's the issue. So I think our concern should be about measuring how much of financial intermediation, to use your word, lending to the productive sector that we have coming from these banks.
Okay. But just before we leave the front page of this day, there's another story there. Lekki Deep Sea Port as game changer for Nigeria. Good news, but the bad news is this. Rivers Port faces shutdown. Closure could lead to congestion of Apapa Port. And I read this story and I said, why should this happen? Because the federal government, this day reliably learned, is considering decommissioning the Rivers Port, which serves the South-South and the Southeast business concerns, following the outcome of a study by the consultant commissioned by the Nigerian Ports Authority. Now, the NPA, led by Hadiza Bala Osman, are saying they want to decommission instead of taking a soft loan from China to rehabilitate that port, so that the South-South, where I come from, and the Southeast can also continue to enjoy services from that port. Of course, against the backdrop of the fact that Lagos Port is already congested. And it's also interesting that this deep sea port in Lekki, which is considered a game changer when fully implemented, is being handled also with Chinese input. They own majority shares.
So why not just go to River State? Then it doesn't make any sense.
It's very clear that we have issues with our seaports. And the Apapa Seaport, which handles about 75% of cargo coming to Nigeria, generating up to about 20 billion naira per day, just tells the kind of challenge that we face. Challenge in terms of policies, challenge in terms of funding, challenge in terms of maintenance. And, the old argument had always been that, look, you need deep sea ports, you need other ports, for you to be able to compete globally in terms of the handling of cargo, imports and exports. Now, in terms of cargo capacity in Nigeria, we're told that the actual capacity in terms of demand is over 100 million metric tons. But at the moment, we can barely manage up to about 60 million metric tons, which means that there is a yawning gap between demand and capacity, and our capacity to compete, either continentally or globally. So a Lekki deep seaport, a seaport anywhere else will make sense, to expand the capacity. Now, one of the recommendations that had been made is that, well, maybe some of the other ports should be dredged. And one point that was made by Hadiza Bala Usman is that, look, those ports in Port Harcourt, in Calabar, that people are recommending should be dredged, that the draft is not more than 10 feet, whereas, globally, the deep sea port of the future is about 17 to 18 feet. So dredging may not even solve the problem. So there is a major challenge there, but where will we get the funds from? Okay, loans, yes, but how fast would we be able to deliver? And then beyond all of this, it's good to talk about Lekki Deep Sea Port in Lagos. The question of what to do with the Apapa Port has not been addressed, which at the time is the major revenue earner for customs. Only yesterday, members of the Presidential Task Force on the Apapa Port and area boys, clashed with truck owners at the port, and one of the drivers was killed. The Presidential Task Force team is blaming the operators, and they are saying it's a fight between the operators and the area boys. Meanwhile, there's supposed to be a loading park there, where the truck owners are complaining that, look, the Presidential Task Force team is now extorting money and defeating the original purpose. So these are questions to also be addressed. Before the Lekki Deep Sea Port comes on stream, if it ever, comes on stream, we should do something about also the Apapa Port, which we have at the moment and which we are not managing well.
If you successfully dredge...
You have always asked for a railway line, a direct railway line to the port.
There is a railway line there. There's a railway. It's just a matter of utilizing it and doing the needful.
And then why don't we have loading bays? I thought the original idea was to have loading bays there. They converted the loading bays to something else, and hence created a traffic crisis.
Yes. But if you dredge...
Yeah, we all know who's responsible for that.
I don't know, tell me.
No, but if you dredge the Warri Port, the Calabar Port, right now, and give some incentive for
just told you that, those ports, even if you dredge them,
it will still serve some purpose. It may not take
for a limited period.
Yes, but it will take some pressure off the... Yeah, let's move on. The Nation newspaper, kidnap of judges, a violation of Temple of Justice, says Nigerian Bar Association. Lawyers slam federal government over insecurity. We must not allow our judges to live and operate under the fear of criminals. Such fear pollutes and desecrates our fountain of justice and, by extension, the rule of law. That's what the lawyers are saying to do.
Putting me on the spot.
Well, security should be for everyone. Everyone. And a lot of high-profile kidnappings have taken place recently. This High Court judge, which happened somewhere between Ondo and Edo State, is the latest. Some time ago, the medical director of the Ira Hospital was kidnapped somewhere in Benin City, and his police orderly was killed in that process. So not just judges, but all persons need security, and that is where the government seems to have been failing the populace.
Absolutely. I'm kind of baffled by this whole violation of a Temple of Justice statement by the NBA. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Nothing makes sense to me this morning, it appears.
Honestly.
Should anybody be kidnapped? Should anybody be kidnapped?
Well, New Telegraph. Alleged misconduct. 8 judges face probe. 29 escape NJC's hammer. Council recommends 4 justices for Supreme Court bench. Justice Chosho confirmed CJ, Chief Judge of the Federal High Court. Now, well,
there was an appointment also for the Customary Court of Appeal.
Customary Court of Appeal.
And also the Qadi of the Sharia Court, the Grand Qadi.
So a lot of movement there in the judiciary. The National Judicial Council
is routine administrative procedure. I mean, it's just the NJC, doing its work. But the question you can ask is that the recommendations of 4 justices to fill the vacancies on the Supreme Court, what will come out of that? Again, I don't see the president, disagreeing with the National Judicial Council, except if, there are questions to be raised, either security questions or integrity questions or investigation, but routinely, ordinarily.
Yeah,
the president,
the NJC
is not likely to overrule the National Judicial Council. The Federal Judicial Service Commission, being part of the process, is assumed to be representing the interests of the executive in the matter. Yeah, so this is just routine.
So those names should be sent to the Senate by the president, hopefully. Now we'll move on. Nigerian Tribune. Reps demand detail of $460 million Abuja CCTV project. The chairman of the House Committee on Finance. I want to know the position of this loan. I am sure we are paying back, but CCTV is not working. Now, the Minister for Finance, Zainab Ahmed, responding, we are servicing the loan, but on the project, we will have to ask the FCT authority. I have no information on the status of the CCTV. Now, the business news, West Africa Business News also has similar story. Reps query delay in $460 million Abuja CCTV project. Why that project is not working? Loan of $460 million taken, probably being serviced, but the project is not working. Of course, compounding the insecurity problem in the Federal Capital Territory, perhaps, and elsewhere. Because if we have CCTV in place, it has its own contribution to the security, dealing with security situation in the country. But this is the Federal Capital Territory we're talking about.
Yeah, at the time, CCTV was the buzzword in Nigeria. And, both the police and everybody recommending CCTV. It was in that context at that time that, this project was initiated. And that must be more than a decade ago. So it's shocking to hear that there's no CCTV. I don't know whether you see any CCTV.
I don't see any CCTV. All I see is robbery.
Anyway, let's take a short break. And then when we return, the review of the headlines will continue. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Money Show here on Arise News. Still with us, reviewing some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Arise News analyst Emmanuel Efeni. Emmanuel?
Yes.
Yes, you have more papers to review.
We have more papers. The Daily Independent. Senate back 10 trillion naira bond to complete 540 roads. Federal government releases 654 billion for capital project, says AMCON overburdened with debt. Yes, the 10 trillion infrastructure bond to fill the gap in funding. The Senate is giving its blessing to that.
Well, Emmanuel Efeni, if we just hold on a second, we'll join our studio in Abuja. We have Nkechi at the court where Abdurrahman Mena. Nkechi will give us an update. Nkechi, are you with us? Yes. Nkechi? Nkechi, can you hear? Yes, Nkechi,
yes, I can hear you, Ruben.
Yes, great. So what's the situation at the Federal High Court?
I'm here at the Federal High Court in Abuja, where, as you said, Abdul Rashad Maina, alongside his son Faisal Maina. From the cause list, we realized that Maina and his son...
Well, we have some technical connection problems
according to the DSS...
Well, she's back, yes. Yes, Nkechi, you may go ahead.
Who is just 20 years old.
We'll go back to Nkechi once we get the connection right. Emmanuel Efeni, you had raised a point about the infrastructure bond.
Yes.
I think it makes sense.
Yes.
If 24% of 2020 budget is devoted to capital expenditure, and the Ministry of Works has about 540 roads across the Federation to fix, and the executive arm of government is insisting that state governments cannot touch federal roads, then of course there will be a need to look for revenue, to look for funds, to be able to make progress with those roads. So an infrastructure bond, yes, will make sense. The last time we attempted it, it was even oversubscribed. Yes. But will it succeed this time around? That is the question.
Let's hope so that these roads can be fixed by the year 2020, because that is the target. We move on. This is the Guardian newspaper, Nigeria's The Guardian newspaper. Nigeria to import doctors from Europe, United States. Plan will curb medical tourism, says minister. Stop brain drain first, stakeholders advise. The Minister of Health, Dr. Osagi Ehanire, made that revelation yesterday that the government will be importing doctors from Europe and America.
Well, I hope somebody will recommend that they should close the borders to imported doctors. What else are we? All land borders, should be, and air and sea borders should be closed to imported doctors.
The whole idea.
We should provide opportunities for the doctors here, for them to remain.
Let's listen to his reasoning.
Okay, go ahead.
The whole idea is to ensure that medical tourism, because we spend so much to go and see these doctors in their country.
That's not how you stop.
Hold just a minute.
They want to bring the mountains.
So you bring the doctors. You bring the doctors here. They will come and work with Nigerian equipment and get the same results.
Chance would be a fine thing.
Yeah, chance would be a very fine thing, because that's not the way in which you stop medical tourism. You stop medical tourism by ensuring that you provide people with the right and adequate healthcare in the country, not by importing doctors. How different is them using Nigerian equipment to Nigerian doctors using Nigerian equipment?
We have Nigerian experts all over the world. I thought the drive should be to convince these experts to come home, provide the enabling environment, the right equipment for them to work in Nigeria as a way of reducing medical tourism. Because even in the presidency, there is medical tourism. Aisha Buhari just came back from 2 months?
2 months.
2 months medical checks in the UK.
I think the theme for me this morning is just nothing makes sense.
Yes, I am
clearly that theme continues. I have no idea what that means.
Honestly.
Let's move on. Let's move on. Well, Vanguard newspaper, federal government, ASU lock horns over government payroll system. We discussed this yesterday. ASU's resistance misplaced, says Finance Minister. ASU fires back, says it's illegal against varsity autonomy. Some static response from ASU, if you ask me.
Well, I mean, it's not. I mean, we made a point yesterday that the two parties involved should meet, and perhaps maybe some of the spokespersons for ASU do not really understand what the integrated payroll system is all about. In terms of the principle, I doubt if ASU members will oppose it. But however, there's another group called the Congress of University Academics. Congress of University Academics, they say that, they will take a dispassionate look at it. And the Congress of University Academics covers about 5 universities, and that they will take a position by Monday. But they sound more positive. But what we get in the story is that, there are just a minority of university teachers insisting that this is a violation of university autonomy. I do not see how this is the case. If the overall objective principle is about transparency and accountability and eliminating ghost workers from the payroll.
Corruption.
They are complaining about allowances. The IPPS is not about allowances. It's about the salary that you take to make sure that the people who are on the payroll actually exist, and that there is no duplication, and that people who have died automatically leave the payroll, and that they do not continue to stay there. If it's a question of allowances, that can be worked out differently. And I think ASU should make itself open to dialogue on this issue and for a proper understanding of what IPC is all about.
And I insist, going on strike should not be part of their option to deal with this issue, because we cannot afford to have the universities closed over payroll, whether your name should be on the payroll system or not. We move on to the foreign newspapers. The Financial Times, Johnson challenges Corbyn to end deadlock with December election. Prime Minister issues, in quotes, zombie parliament. Labour wants no deal ruled out. Budget pulled. Now, if we look at the same story being reported by the Times of London, Labour in chaos over election bid by Johnson, while the Independent simply ask, who wants an election? Well, Johnson has proposed that proposal will be tabled on Monday, but the Labour Party seemed to be at odds with itself, as it were, because whereas Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of Labour, is not forthcoming, said they are yet to take a decision, there was a note sent by the Labour chief whip to all Labour MPs that they should abstain from voting in that when that proposal is tabled on Monday. So where do we stand?
Well, there's a standoff at the moment. I mean, Labour is saying that, they don't object to an election as long as a no-deal Brexit is off the table. That's what Jeremy Corbyn is saying. They played Cameroon. He's saying that, there must be a second referendum. They are, opposed to an election. The Green Party also seems to be opposed. But the DUP, the SNP, and, members of the Conservative Party, they are divided too. But, generally, you see that most of the parliamentarians across party lines do not mind an election, but they give one condition or the other. But why I say there is a standoff is that many of them are saying, let us see what comes from Brussels first. And there's a meeting in Brussels this morning to decide on, whether an extension should be given or a flexible extension, something called flextension, and, it then looks like it's a gamble because what Boris Johnson is doing clearly is to force the hands, particularly of the EU and also of Westminster, because he has said that if there's going to be an extension, the extension should not go beyond November 15, right, or November 20 at best. But what he does not support is a January 31, 2020 extension, which on the basis of which now is, asking for this election. And this is the second time he's asking for an election. The first time...
He needs to third of Parliament to do that.
Yeah. The first time he asked for an election on October 15. This time he's asking for election December 12. But you are right. You will need 2/3 of the Parliament to be able to see it through. Will he get it?
I don't think so.
Thank God for the fixed
Well, thank you very much, Efeni.
Thank you very much.